You do too.
At times. But seems like you're in it most of the time.
My head's always there. Shouldn't be sometimes, actually.
Well, it's good. I like it.
Um, oh, you're right.
I don't think there's going to be anything to really do next week. You know what I mean? We should really talk Thursday about
When?
is needed, you know?
Like what the next steps are.
Yeah, and when we need to talk to Bill and Cal because they're supposed we have a change order
Meeting. That's on the 16th.
16th, so the following, the 22nd, there have to be one. I'm not going to be there that night. Nor am I gonna
Do you know
be
where
there
your
the next
sister's going to have the surgery now?
She's having it the 18th, but I had already booked back in end of August, Thanksgiving plans. So we have a Airbnb.
We'll call the meeting to order, please. Ms. Nash, could you do a roll call vote? I mean, a roll call, I'm sorry, not vote.
Sure. Mr. Gomes,
Yeah,
Mrs. Boland,
Here.
Ms. Boatright,
Here.
Mr. Dring, Dr. Flowers,
Present.
Mr. Leary.
Yeah.
Ms. Winslow. We have a quorum. Thank you.
thank you. We'll have Ms. Bowen lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now have a moment of silence. If we could keep the following individuals who have passed away in your thoughts and prayers. Peter O'Connell, retired teacher and coach at Rogers High School. Floyd Kringle, grandfather of Lily Wilson, TMS social worker. Barbara Reaper, mother of Elizabeth Brett, technology clerk. We'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. And that gets us into our student council update. We have Meg Meridew with us to give us our monthly update.
Hello, everyone. Tomorrow marks the end of the first quarter for the school. Tonight is the Rogers Open House that started at 5:30 and it goes until 7:30 tonight. Our volleyball team won in the quarterfinals yesterday night, and they will play tomorrow night against Classical at 6:30 at the Rogers High School gym. The Rogers Boosters is holding their annual tree and wreath sale, and that will be on December 4th and 5th. The Rogers PTO is holding a beach bonfire for all the students and staff to go to Easton's Beach, and that will be on Wednesday, November 24th from 6 to 8, and that is free to attend for students and staff. And then lastly, the class of 2023 is holding a dodgeball tournament in order to raise money for their class. And that's all I have for November. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the school committee for Meg? All righty, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks you.
That moves us into recognition and certificates of achievement. This evening, we'll be recognizing Newport Police and the Fire Departments, Newport Police and Fire Department for their coordination and leadership in the 20th anniversary ceremony for the 9/11 remembrance. We have Colonel Corbett and a cadet. I don't have the cadet's name, I apologize, but if.
Chad Vieira.
Okay, Chad. The certificates are up there. I put them up on the podium ahead of time, so I'll turn it over to you to make the presentations. Thank you.
So we'd like to thank, first off, everyone who came to our 20th anniversary 9/11 event. I think it was organized perfectly and executed excellent. It showed a great leadership and dedication to how we honor our fallen. And well, we'd like to thank Deputy Chief Donnelly of the Newport Fire Department, Lieutenant Amaro from the Newport Police Department, and Officers Pieri and Officer Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frank Barrett. And I'm going to give you Lieutenant April Amros. All right. And then also Mary Scott. Thank you very much. And finally, Deputy Chief Markman. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Could we have you all stand together so Marcin could take a group picture, please? Thank you.
Marcy, get closer.
Thank you. The next resolution is a resolution and recognition that November is National Veterans and Military Families Month. We recognize and thank our veterans and military families. Newport is very fortunate to have many military families and partnerships with military organizations in our area, such as Newark and the Naval War College. Ms. Boland will now read a resolution on behalf of National Veterans and Military Families Month.
First of all, I want to say that I'm very proud to be able to read this today. Our family came here 30 years ago, on a military tour, and we just never left. So, and I'm proud to say that Newport recognizes the strengths and the contributions of the military families, and we're always here making sure that we take care of our military families through the military compact. So, with that being said, I'd like to read the following. Whereas the month of November is designated as National Veterans and Military Families Month, and we recognize and thank our veterans and military families for their immeasurable contributions and sacrifices in support of our national security. And whereas our military embodies strength, resilience, and courage, and strengthens the security and safety of our nation and communities. And whereas our military contends with separation from their families, makes adjustments to new living situations and communities. And whereas it is a time when America honors and recognizes those unique sacrifices and challenges family members make in support of their loved ones in uniform. And whereas we show our appreciation and our gratitude to our military spouses, partners, children, caregivers, and survivors of our service members and veterans for their selfless sacrifice on behalf of the nation. And therefore, be it resolved that the Newport School Committee wishes to honor our national veterans and military families for their contributions and service to our country, state, and the city of Newport. And that's signed by the Newport School Committee.
Thank you. It's a great recognition, and we do have many military families, as we know, in our schools, so that's great. All right, so that leads us into public comment. I'll try not to forget it this evening. So anybody signed up?
We do not have anyone signed up this evening.
All right. And there is going to be a motion to.
I'd like to move that we move the discussion, which is item number 6.1, up right now before we go into action items.
Motion and a second. Okay. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So that leads us to discussion and Mr. DeSanti is here this evening to give us the update from the school building committee and the building progress. So,
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. Joe DeSanti, with Downs Construction, Director of Project Management. I'll give a brief update on Pell. Hopefully that's better.
yes.
Brief update on Pell. Construction's going very well. As you can see, we're having a topping off a beam signing ceremony tomorrow. What happens is on construction, the last beam that goes in place becomes a ceremony. We're going to sign off, have the children be able to sign the beam, and anybody else. We hope that everybody participates in that. It's actually a very significant event. Schedule-wise, that project is tracking right on schedule. We are well ahead of scheduled completion of August 2022, which was even ahead of the original schedule that we had. So everything's going very well there. Budget-wise, we're maintaining a very healthy contingency. And thank you to the generosity of Van Buren Foundation, we've been able to enhance the project by adding additional programming in as well. So, Mr. Chairman, if there's any specific questions about Pell before I move on to Rogers.
Do you have any? I don't see any. Go right ahead.
Rogers High School, I'm pleased to say that the design team, after we challenged them to go back, there were some issues regarding the size of the building and cost. We're able to go back, redesign the building. They provided a conceptual drawing last night for the building committee to review that met the current 2019 MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement, which said for 755 students, we needed to build a project that was approximately 166,000 square feet with a total budget of $98.8 million. With that $98.8 million, that included a lot of soft costs, as they call, which would be contingencies, architects, furniture, technology, which would leave us with a construction budget of $80,500,000, which is to demolish the existing building and then construct a new building. With the exception of the field and a couple other minor items, though I shouldn't say minor items, a couple other items, the walking track and the gym, the design team of SLAM has come back and said and presented a plan that they believe could be built within the constraints of the square footage as well as the budget. The next step for them is to continue with the drawings to get to a schematic design. That design will get costed out by cost estimators by not only the SLAM team, but by Gilbane Construction, which is our construction manager. And there is going to be a slight delay in schedule with submitting those documents for RIDE review and approval. But based on some early bid packages, which we would like to do some demolition of some of the existing building like the auditorium, we believe that time could be made up and we still will be completed based on the current schedule in advance of the original completion date.
Thank you. Excuse me. I need Ms. Winslow. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Jill. I just wanted to know when you expect to have the schematic design completed and off to ride, the stage 3.
By the end of this year, early next year.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Boland?
I wanted to add, though, we're still looking for money. So it's not as if, it's a complete done deal. Our priorities were to get all of the, programmatic things inside the building. And we are still going to work very diligently because we have to find money to put in a premier field. And it does not include automotive right now or cosmetology because they weren't in the stage 2. So in central office. So we're out looking, asking the state, we're seeing what the city can do to help. And we will do our due diligence to make sure it happens.
Correct. And you're absolutely right. There's certain aspects of the project, like the field, that we have to identify funding for, because ultimately we would like to do those as alternates, which would give us the ability to add that to the project in the future.
Ms. Boland.
Right, and as was stated yesterday, they have to design to that dollar amount. So they're looking at the materials and systems, and we'll find out what that is in the next cost rounding, which is in about a month, correct?
Correct. We have asked that team to provide us with a high-quality, durable building. So we want building products like for the exterior skin, which are brick, or something like brick that will last a very long time. So we do not want to jeopardize the quality of the building at all. And that is the directive they have. And they believe they can develop that cost model to do that. Additionally, last night, there was a presentation that we can make that available to the school committee as well.
Go right ahead, Ms. Bourne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Mr. Leary, because I know it was a huge, big deal that he is the one that we have brick here now at the school at Pell because he pushed it. But they wanted to apologize for having to put brick in, and I kept saying, this is Newport. You don't have to apologize for brick. So it'll make Mr. Leary very happy.
Any other questions for Ms. Santi? Ms. Winslow, go right ahead.
So just to follow up on the schematic design and the timeline of that. So we're going to settle on our design within our budget, what we believe we can afford by the end of the year, early next year. So like if the public wants to keep being involved in designing the building or hearing our thought process on that, that's in the next 2 months, really, that process is going to wrap up. But then if we do find money for ad alternates, that would, once our stage 3 is submitted and approved, that can still happen. Things can get added on if they are on the ad alternate list, but we're not going to diverge significantly from our schematic design.
Yeah, I'm going to try to
Right.
answer all that.
Sorry.
I'm trying to work it
like-
backwards. No, it's a lot of good questions you asked,
Okay.
and it reminded me that I think when you look at the plan, you'll see it's much more compact, much more cost effective. It's actually going to be a really nice looking building. It's not long and meandering in different ways, so you'll see that it's a lot more cost effective looking building. With that, we are still going to continue to design. I've said this before, the schematic design is the most important part of any project when you're building a new building or even addition. It's the time to make corrections. You don't want to get too far down the road where the drawings are developed and you start erasing and redrawing. It becomes very expensive. And especially once you start constructing, you want to start adding things. But to your point, this is the time to start identifying alternates, to start adding those alternates to the design, so that if we can afford it in the future, it is there, it is constructible off of those documents. We would have a very specific discussion with RIDE, because when we go to RIDE, we have to present drawings that match the budget. And if we do not have a cost estimate that is in line with that $80,500,000, they will reject it. So we would have to provide a narrative to say that we identify these alternates, we're identifying additional funding, or if bid results come in better than expected, we might be able to afford them anyways. But this is going to be an important couple of months, and any input from the public would certainly be ideal for them to be looking at it now. And again, we'll make that presentation available to the school committee as well, so the public can have a chance to view those.
Any other questions for Mr. Santi? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That will now lead us into our action items. Action item 5.1 is a request for acceptance of the American Rescue Plan Homeless Children and Youth Grant. Director Ashley requests acceptance of the American Rescue Plan Homeless Children and Youth Grant in the amount of $95,664.89. RIDE has provided emergency relief funds to address COVID impact on homeless children and youth. Is there a motion to approve the grant as presented this evening? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Winslow. And Director Ashley, if you want to give us a little overview, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. So as you spoke to, this grant is really much needed in helping us not only identify but continue to support our homeless population. And obviously, we need to do everything we can to support our children who are struggling with housing and other needs. And so we're really excited about this potential opportunity to expand that support and resources that we can provide for our families, students.
Ms. Boland?
So that 95,000, is that a one-year grant, 2-year grant, 1 year? Do you spend it all this year? Is it going to be repeated, or do we not know that?
We hope it would be repeated, but at this point, we can't verify that. But we would, obviously gladly take what we can.
Any other questions for Mr. Ashley?
Mr.
Mr. Leary?
Could you explain what some of that 95,000 going to be spent on?
Sure. So it's really a combination. First is transportation, because that's been identified as a pretty significant barrier to families. The families have all sorts of reasons for struggling with transportation, and transportation costs can be pretty considerable, in the tens of thousands of dollars. So that's one significant topic. The next is just resources to community outreach, medical, health, and potential even housing supports to these families if they qualify. And then also expanded hours and services of our family service coordinators who do really this groundwork in contacting the families weekly, if not daily, to make sure that we're keeping track of our students.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ashley? Not seeing or hear any. Mr. Nash, can you do a roll call vote to approve the grant, to approve acceptance of the grant?
Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is 5.2. This is a request for acceptance of the Rhode Island General Assembly grant for Pell STEM programming. Director Ashley requests acceptance of the Rhode Island General Legislative Grant in the amount of $3,000 to purchase spike and brick cube materials from Lego Education. Is there a motion to approve accepting the grant as presented? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boatright. And Director Ashley, again, if you want to give us a...
Yes, thank you. We're really excited about this opportunity to enhance the learning opportunities for the students grades K to 4 at Pell School, particularly in the STEM block of time that they have. These kits would give kids the opportunity to visualize the concepts, the often difficult concepts that they're trying to teach in terms of just the basics of motion and momentum, and really a beginning teachings of the fundamentals of computer science and programming. And so we'd be excited for the opportunity to present these to our students.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Ashley? Not seeing, no, good, Ms. Boland, go right ahead.
So I have a question, like these sets can they be reused next year? So you're going to keep them in separate containers, I just know what Lego boxes can sometimes look like in a home. I'm sure you have kids.
Yes,
So
I
I
do.
just want to make sure
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, they do come with containers to
keep
to
them
store
separate
them.
so you can read.
Yes, no, yes.
Okay.
So we can absolutely
Just
reuse
checking.
these. Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Ms. Nash, you do a roll call vote to accept the grant in the amount of $3,000.
Yes, Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers? Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the request for use of ESSA funds to purchase English language arts materials and reading intervention program. Director Ashley requests approval to use ESSA funds to purchase English language arts materials and a reading intervention program in the amount of $109,135. The reading will support K through 5 readers. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented. Ms. Boland, seconded by Ms. Boatright, and Director Ashley.
Yes, thank you. We, request before the committee to purchase these curriculum materials, as you spoke to, K to 5. And this request is really two-tier. First is what you can kind of consider like hard physical curriculum materials. So books, classroom packets, sets for students to use directly in the classroom. They do accompany, there is an electronic version that accompanies these physical books so that teachers and students can use both sets in or out of the classroom. And these we really view as a critical component. As a reminder, the Pell School purchased the Into Reading, a new curriculum, and this is part of that curriculum. And so it really provides first just some additional resources that we were a little short on because of enrollment. Question.
Go right ahead, Ms. Boland.
So question number one, is this a license for more than 1 year on this, the program? Or is it a
Yes,
1 year
so,
license?
It is more than 1 year. Yes,
It
I
is.
believe it. I'll double check. I believe it's 3 years.
And can this be done at home or is this a total in school?
Both. It can be in-home and at school.
Ms. Winslow?
Yeah, I had two questions.
Yes.
Sorry, but I think you answered one of them. But my first question is, if any of the books you're purchasing, will they be in Spanish or any of the other languages that our kids speak at home?
Yeah, so there is a Spanish editions available. They're primarily online.
Okay.
And so if we needed a hard copy Spanish, that can be provided upon
Okay.
request.
So are they translations or are there any, Spanish-speaking authors included and, or is it all translation from, American?
I would have to check.
Authors.
I believe there are some Spanish authors, but I would have to
Okay.
go back and research.
Okay. And my second question was more along the lines of I just saw that, was it June that we adopted the Into Reading high quality curriculum? And so I was nervous, why are we adding more reading intervention when we just got this high quality curriculum? So I think that now that you've answered that this is actually part of it. Okay. I guess I'll just add my 2 cents that, I think I read recently that the Read by 3 program hadn't really lived up to expectations. We have reading specialists in the elementary school that we kept on board, but only through ESSER funds were we able to do that. I think that was going to be on the chopping block. So we know the kids are still struggling with reading. What about hiring more teachers, mentors, different styles of reading specialists to engage the kids one-on-one? With all this money we're putting into the curriculum, we all know that it's the relationship, right, that helps the kids. So is there an opportunity to bring more people into the reading curriculum?
So I appreciate that point of the question. And you're absolutely right about, first and foremost, when we're talking about learning, you need a safe, supportive relationship, right, between the child and the teacher. And so as we start the budget season, the personnel and staffing is definitely at the top of the list because reading is at the top of our list. This is a top priority, which is part of why I'm here tonight. And to that point too, the other component to this request is the Read 180 intervention program. So that's a support that will give our teachers and the students who are behind in reading that leveled or tiered support. So it won't start at a level that's so far over their heads that they can't even engage with it. The idea that begins at a level that they can do and then builds off of that success.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Boatright?
Just a quick question. She asked about Spanish being translated. Does it can you get it so other translations besides Spanish? Because I know we do have a lot of other languages in our school system.
It can come in other languages. It would have to be a particular request, but yes.
But you, within this dollar amount, could you get them, or would that be extra?
I'd
don't
have
know.
to check. I believe it would be built into the request because the online version, you just get access to
Mhm.
that program and then can
Great.
request the specific
Okay.
language.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not hearing or seeing any, Ms. Nash, you do a roll call vote to approve the request as presented.
Yes, Mr. Gomes?
Aye?
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, 5.4 is a request for approval to install a camera system at Thompson Middle School. Director Young is requesting approval of IP video surveillance equipment for Thompson Middle School in the amount of $47,966.56. With approval, the project will be funded utilizing capital improvement funds. So a motion to approve the request is presented. Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boatright, and Director Young, if you want to give us a little overview of the project.
Yes, good evening. So, one, I think this is well overdue. Right now, there isn't any cameras inside the building. We met with many different groups to walk the inside and the outside of the building. Received some proposals, sent them forward to the principal, the vice principal, as well as the dean of students. So they've all reviewed the proposals, and this is the one that meets all their needs.
All right, are there any questions from Mr. Leary?
Mr. Young, 3-4 questions. Is this the whole school, first of all?
The whole school?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
inside.
Okay, I was going to get to one. Is there a schematic for all this being done?
Yes, it's in the package.
So if somebody has to come fix something, they can
Yes.
go to the schematic to do
Go right
that?
to the
Okay.
schematic, correct.
How many cameras are going to be?
I think 30.
I'd have to recount them up, Mr. Laird.
Oh, 30?
Yeah.
There you
I
are.
think that's what I read, 30.
And is there a motion for these to zoom in, these cameras?
No,
No. And what type of cable are they using? Cat 5 or what's the cable you use?
it's a Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable, yes.
They're using Cat 5 cable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Boland?
Yes, couple things. Who monitors them? And and how long does the reel last? Like, does it take a picture of it and save it, or?
So it's essentially there's a server inside the building, and it'll save on the server. And whoever has access, so the principal, it's just the principal will have access, and they'll determine who else has access.
You can go back and look at.
Yeah,
those
it
incidents.
saves on there. Yep.
Okay. So no one has to monitor them during the day?
No.
Just, it's there?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Ms. Winslow?
I guess I feel hypocritical. Like I don't like the idea of security cameras, but it's the world we live in.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, we already have them here at Pell, right? We
Yes.
have them at Rogers.
Yep.
So I didn't actually realize we didn't have any at Thompson. Is there a particular driver for this request? Or is it just that you've never had the budget? I mean, we know that there's been the bathroom.
I was approached by the
Yeah.
building
Yeah,
to ask
okay,
if they could get them.
okay,
So we drove forward with that, yeah.
okay.
I know that we've had
Yeah.
multiple years, we've had this request in our budget, in our maintenance budget to provide funding for this, so it's not it's finally come to that we can do it, but
Right.
it has been a request for several years from the administration at Thompson for these cameras.
Right. Again, my 2 cents, if you'll humor me, but just wish you hear about behavior in middle school all the time, right? It's a rough age. I believe that the kids are crying out for help, for validation and affirmation, and affection and whatever else they might need. I think our teachers are probably stressed and tired and needing their own mental health support, and who knows if they're seeking it or not. I wonder how many of us, should be that aren't. But I would love to see more investment in, again, adults to help the kids so that we wouldn't need security cameras. Anyway, that's me.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Nash, you do a roll call vote to approve the request for the cameras at Thompson.
Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Thank you. Next action item is 5.5. It's a request for the approval of the amended 2021-2022 school budget. The amended budget reflects adjustments as requested by RIDE through the approval process of ESSER 2 funds. Is there a motion to approve the budget amendment as presented? Ms. Boland, seconded by Ms. Boatright, and Mr. Gonzalez.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Are there any particular questions that you have in regards to the budget, the way it was presented? I tried to identify the material changes on page 1 that were the changes from the previous budget we had to what we have currently in front of you.
Ms. Winslow.
I just want to confirm my understanding. We had the money in our operating budget because we had a surplus, so we were able to take from the operating budget and move some things back into ESSER and vice versa.
So
Did I get that right?
during the final review of our ESSER 2 application, RIDE asked for a couple of changes.
Ms. Gonzalez, can you pull that? It's hard to hear you. Thank you.
During the final review of the ESSER 2 grant by the federal administrator at RIDE, there was a request to make some changes to our insurance allocations. I have noted specific discussions with them in the monthly report on page, the first paragraph. But yes, we had some items budgeted in the ESSER 2 grant that they asked us to make modifications to, and I've updated so that way our final approval was awarded.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Boatright.
Just for clarification, though, we're not really using any of our fund balance to cover it. You're just shifting things, correct? Because I think she mentioned that,
Oh,
right?
usually we
just
have
is
no
correct.
money left over, but I
No, but
thought
there-
we were able to move things because of,
We're not using any of that money.
Got
It's
it.
just moving things from ESSER funds to the general fund and back and forth, right?
thank you.
That is exactly what's happening. There is no request in front of you to use any of the fund balance.
Thank you.
Mr. Gomes?
Mr. Leary.
Mr. Gonzalez, it's time to ask the questions I emailed you, or should we do it when you do your budget?
It depends on the question. Is it relevant to the budget here?
Well, it's relevant to ESSA funds, so either way. I mean, I could do it later on, you know.
I'd be happy to answer ESSER 2 questions.
So-
That's identified. The entire grant award is on page 2.
Right. So my concern is that, and I sent the email to you, you know, I gave these, you go online and you pick up the budget, and the grants. And when I work with a lot of CPAs doing tax and things like that, so I at times tell these people to take a look at this stuff. When they looked at the 2000, and I know we've answered this before, we looked at the 2020 expenses and the 2020 income. It says you get over $1 million. However, the surplus at the end of 2020 says less than $600,000. I know because the superintendent sends us in a weekly update the amount of money in the ESSA funds. My request would be that you put a page like you do with the grants with all the ESSA money deducted, like you did on this page, on page 2, on page 2 of this report, so you know where it's at. Because if you're just a local person, look at this, and you don't see the weekly update, and it's no reason why they would, you would say, well, how come it says you're $1 million and you're only $600,000? So it's like, the request would be, can you do a report as you do with the grants and with the monthly business report, the big one with just ESSA funds and
So
deductions?
I see two issues with your question, sir. The fund balance that was shared and is continued to be shared on a monthly basis, going back 2 years, the difference between what we have for an actual fund balance and the difference between revenues and expenses of $1 million. We began the year with a negative balance. We were in the hole. We had a promise to pay back the city because they covered us for prior years when we were short on revenues. So that's the net difference. I believe the number is around $695,000 from 2020. Okay, that's separate and distinct from the federal grant awards.
So I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but why if you take the 220 expenses and the 220 income, it's $1,035,000 and not $695,000?
We owed the city of Newport
$400,000.
just under.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've identified exactly what that was relating to. It was a little over a year ago, and I'd be happy to share that document with you, but we began the year with a deficit in our fund balance, which offset the revenues that were higher than our expenses for that particular school year, 2020.
So the last part, thank you, I just don't see why we can't do a report. You do a report in the grants, you never even talk about them, just issue them. Why can't you do a report each month of where this ESSA funds, how much you started with, and deductions coming out of it, so that we can see it? And a report, because as if you're a CPA or you're a business person and you open up the agenda, they don't see that. I see it, I understand it, but it's not in with your 2 reports. If the report's being done, why not issue it in with your whole business report?
So I just want to be clear, the ESSER 1 grant that we were awarded last year, we only had 3 expenditures applied to that award, and those were exhausted within the first quarter of our fiscal year. So the ESSER 2 has much more activity and detail that can be provided, and I will modify the grant award document that I share on a monthly basis to include the ESSER 2 accounts.
But it's in this document.
It is in our budget document on page 2. That's the entire award by detail on what we plan to spend with regard to ESSER 2. But I think Mr. Leary is asking how much did we spend in a particular month, and can I have that update? I think, is that correct, sir?
Yes, you continue enrolling thing going down, absolutely.
Okay, so that would be with regard to ESSER 2 going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any, Ms. Nash, you do a roll call vote to approve the amended budget as presented.
Yes, Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Ms. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you. That leads us to action item 5.6 is a request for adoption of policy 4450. Policy 4450 is the Title IX Sexual Harassment and Retaliation Policy for the first reading. Is there a motion to approve the policy as presented? Ms. Winslow, seconded by Ms. Boatright. And Dr. Flowers, if you want to give us a...
Yes, the policy itself is, the policy statement is about 3 pages. And if you have it's on your screen, or probably on a printed copy, You see the editing marks here. And the policy committee worked a great deal on this just to make sure everything was worded appropriately. The balance of the 35 pages are the documents that are called supporting documents for any protocols to facilitate the policy. If there are any reports of any kind of sexual harassment. And again, this has been vetted. The language has gone over very thoroughly by our attorney. And just very few words have been changed. I think if you go down toward one part, the superintendent would be the appeal decision maker rather than the attorney for the school department. But this is a very important document that really has to be included in our policy.
Thank you. Ms. Boland,
Yeah, who is our Title IX coordinator?
sitting right next to the superintendent.
Okay,
She has many hats.
all right, well, congratulations.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Winslow?
I'll add that I learned that our Title IX coordinator and our superintendent attended some pretty extensive training to come up with this policy. And yeah, there was a lot of work behind it. So they did a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any, Ms. Nash, you do a roll call vote to approve policy 4450 on the first reading.
Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Thank you. The next four action items, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9, and 5.10 can be pulled off the agenda. We do not have the formalized agreements for those four action items. That leads us to action item 511, which is a request for approval of a memorandum of understanding between Newport Public Schools and RIDE. Is there a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding as presented? Ms. Boland, seconded by Dr. Flowers and Dr. Jermaine.
This memorandum of understanding between the school department and the Rhode Island Department of Education is part of the LEAPS initiative, which stands for Learning Equity Accelerating Pathways. And its purpose is to help support those districts that were eligible due to the COVID impact, also due to other factors, including student achievement, poverty, the diverse populations one has in one's community. So we're very fortunate to be eligible for this. There, as you can see in the document, the Memorandum of Understanding, we will be working with RIDE, and the Director Andrade, who was just sitting next to me, and myself will be attending sessions with a task force from Harvard Proving Ground, which will help us in formulating a strategic plan to address the gaps we have in learning and to also address the diverse population needs of our community. We also will be given assistance as far as our programming. We have started to map out with the ESSER 3 funding, and as long as we align to the 7 areas in this agreement, then we will be reimbursed, and so we actually get an additional 1.76 in funds. So we're very appreciative, and we're looking forward to moving forward. The training starts at the end of this week.
Ms. Boatright.
And the length of this time is more than 1 year, correct?
Yes, it's a 2-year commitment.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leary.
could Superintendent explain who's going, or tell us who's going to the training?
I will be attending the training with Director Andrade as well as Director Ashley. I have Director Ashley, Director Young, Dr. Mooney. The principals will be attending some at some times. So it's the Central District Office, and then it's also our building leaders.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
They have
Ms.
one.
Boatright? Oh, Miss, go right ahead.
I just got one
Okay,
other
I'll come
question.
right back to
Could
you.
you give the people example of the other districts that are being into this?
Other
Just
districts
a
that
couple
are,
of them.
that, I don't know if we'll get them all. The other districts that are involved are West Warwick, Woonsocket, Central Falls, Pawtucket, Providence, I don't, North Providence, that's right, and North Providence.
So these districts also have a lot of trouble with attendance and test results?
They have challenges in the area of poverty, attendance, also test scores, and they have very diverse populations.
Ms. Boatright?
You had mentioned that there are some of the programs that we are doing that are in alignment with it. Maybe you could just share some of those, because I think that's very important that we're already a little bit on the.
Yes, some of the programs we've already started to implement have been the extended partnerships with our community partners, all the way from Boys and Girls Club, Fab Newport, Sankofa, who else? Martin Luther King. So those programs are working with AmeriCorps. Those programs already are starting to do an outreach as far as to the community. We're also in some of our hires, we've funded with ESSER 2 funding, but we can also use ESSER 3 or the MTS support we have in the schools. We also have additional I believe, curriculum we can purchase and take a look at as far as supporting social emotional programs as well. And then we're looking at the training we're doing, I think, to Miss Winslow's points earlier as far as the literacy and what we're doing. I do want to say that Director Ashley, working with our teacher leaders, TAM leadership, we are having quite a few, I think it's over 40? Is it over 40 in the training for this year? Yes. Yes, we have over 40 teachers between our elementary school and our high school taking the literacy training. And then we've actually mapped out for next year, all our teachers will be fulfilling the requirements of the General Assembly regulation. Science of reading, and it will be in the proficiency level and in the awareness level. But what I'm most proud of is we have quite a few high school teachers that are going for the proficiency level, and for the public, that's about 80 hours, 80 additional hours that teachers will be in training for that. So the message about literacy is very strong, and we'll use some of that funding as well. Thank you.
Dr. Flowers?
Yeah, just a couple of points here that I think should be underscored that in this agreement is that the, in collaboration with RIDE and the other partners, to place equity at the center of all decisions and actions, and that's very important. And also that the district will use all reasonable efforts to plan for sustaining the continuous improvement infrastructure, as they call it, and investments when the program is over. So I think it's so important to know that there are efforts to not just working at a finite time, but to take what has been learned and developed and to carry it forward. And to me, that's two of the key points here.
Thank you, Dr. Flowers. That's a very important point. Part of this work is how do we sustain our efforts going forward? What's working, what's not working? And also using clear metrics that we can actually, we have a new baseline as far as our, for all districts, as the Commissioner said, we're going to use the new baseline coming out of COVID to start to measure our learning and improvements in student achievement, as well as in attendance, graduation rates, et cetera. So that is part of it as well. And then also, how do leaders create a sustainable funding mechanism and business model that supports a high-functioning organization? So that's other work we're doing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Ms. Nash, could you do a roll call vote to approve the Memorandum of Understanding as presented?
Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
And Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you. The next item up is our consent agenda. That's approval of minutes, request for approval of invoices and requisitions, and request for approval of home instructions. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Are there any questions or on the consent agenda? All right, not seeing any. Ms. Nash, you do a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Thank you. The next item is item 8. It's correspondence. And I believe the correspondence is just the minutes of the school building committee meeting from October 25th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the correspondence as presented? Ms. Boland, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Any questions on the correspondence? Not seeing any. Ms. Nash, can you do a roll call vote to approve the correspondence as presented?
Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you. That leads us to reports from superintendent and staff. Is there a motion to approve the reports from superintendent and staff as presented? Ms. Boatright, seconded by Ms. Boland. And of course, the first two, 9.1 and 9.2, are for expenditure and revenue and grant reports. And I just made him a doctor, but Mr. Gonzalez is coming up to. Mr. Gonzalez is coming up to give us his report.
So within my narrative, I covered some of the changes that we had in the budget that we just talked about earlier tonight. Are there any additional questions to any of the backup I supplied?
Mr. Leary?
Nope.
Okay. Don't believe so.
Thank you all.
It's because you do such a good job with your reports.
I try to be detailed. There's a lot of things happening.
Thank you.
They are very detailed. I will give you that. The reports are detailed and quite concise, so thank you for that. Next one would be, are there any questions on the grant report? No? Okay. Next would be 9.3 enrollment, demographics, and homeless reports. Are there any questions on those reports for the superintendent? All right. And then lastly, 9.4 is the superintendent update on partnerships, collaborations, and personnel. Any questions for the superintendent on those updates? Ms. Winslow?
I just wanted to confirm I see 2 student engagement facilitators, the new positions that we approved in last meeting or so. So we're still looking for one more for because there were going to be 3, right? One for each school, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad to see it.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Boland?
I just wanted to add that both of the young people that have been hired are graduates of Rogers High School and the whole system. And as of late, we've seen a turning where we're trying to, hire from within, so it's good.
Well, I'm not so, we're trying to hire from within, but it's great to have those folks coming back too to apply, so that helps.
We wanted people from our community to do this work, so
Yeah.
that's a good sign. I know those names too.
Correct.
Because they know the community. That's why.
All right. So those are the reports. Motion has been made and seconded. Any other questions or comments? If not, Ms. Nash, you do a roll call to approve acceptance of the reports as presented.
Mr. Combs?
Aye.
Mrs. Boland?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Thank you. Quarterly reports. There is a college and career readiness report. Is there a motion to approve the report as presented? Or accept the report, I should say, as presented? Ms. Winslow and second by Ms. Boatright. Are there, I don't see Ms. Clark here, so,
Ms. Clark is not here. She was at the open house this evening, and
Oh, that's
she's
right.
actually still in the middle of filming. So I think she was doing some interviews as well tonight.
all right.
She's been filming our local businesses.
All right. So if there are any questions, you can get those to Dr. Jermaine, who can pass them along to Ms. Clark if you do have any questions on that report. Motion, Ms. Winslow.
Just a comment. I just
Sure.
wanted to thank Carrie Clark for these reports. I really enjoy them. And she works very hard, so it's a gem. Our NAC Tech is a gem, and I just love that she has a lot of information to share with us, so thank you if she hears this.
I will pass it on. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, Ms. Nash, it's just a quarterly report, so we're all set with that as presented. That leads us into section 11, which is meeting dates and agenda items. The next regular school committee meeting is Tuesday night, December 14th. There is a school building committee meeting on policy. Nope, the school building, that was last night, so that's already happened. Policy Subcommittee, Wednesday, November 17th, 5:30 at Pell Elementary Cafeteria. That is it on future meetings, posted meetings as of now.
Mr. Chair, I should just make mention that on December 15th, it appears we will be having, if we can have quorum, the city meeting with the city council on predictable funding for the schools.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
if I
Leary.
may ask this at this time and just mention it, going forward, can we not make sure that parents' night are not the same night as the school committee? It's kind of very, I don't know, it's discouraging that you have a parents' night.
So, Mr. Leary, that was a reschedule.
Right, why can't you reschedule on a night without a school committee?
I think it was going so far out on the calendar that was the night, the next night they selected. But I hear you very much about that. I hear you on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments for meeting dates and agenda items? There are no executive session items, so the next motion would be for adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Boatright, Ms. Boland, any questions or comments on it? If not,
1 hour, 2 minutes. Good job, Mr. Gomes.
if there are no comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Does anyone ever say no?
There's only 6 people out there to say anything. Huh? Well, most of the people will be paid to be here, so.